All right, folks. Will Utani dethrone the hybrids? Can T.Ocellus truly reanimate dead tissue, as well as Eames' reveal and a brand new special guest this week? All of that and more on a brand new Game Over. Stay tuned. All right. Good evening to those of you on the East Coast. A good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to Game Over, the show in which we, that is myself and my guest hosts, each said week dissect the episodes of Alien Earth, the series, of course, which is tracking the earlier years in the lore of the Alien universe. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, and the subject of today's show will be episode 8, titled The Real Monsters. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. If you checked us out live before, appreciate you guys being with us live, but just also know if you're checking us out after the fact that we will do a timestamp of a lot of the things that are going to be discussed in this episode. And if you don't know the rundown, here it goes. We're going to do a recap. I'm going to introduce our guest for the week, and then we're going to go into some themes and analysis of that said episode, as well as some theories. So with that out of the way, let's get into the breakdown with the episode. And of course, this goes without saying that spoilers are ahead. So we begin this week's episode with the loose xenomorph coming upon the remains of Arthur on the beach, an image which we see here, which brings the viewer full circle to the episode's end. As the xenomorph stealthily lurks across the island, it eventually stumbles across Dame, paying her respects to the human remains of the hybrids. Ready to dispose of Dame, the xenomorph successfully stalks behind her, only to be thwarted by Prodigy's search and rescue unit. However, unlike Dame's rescue, the rescue turns out to be far different for others on the island as the xenomorph continues its onslaught. Elsewhere on the island, we find Kavalier stewing in his quarters as Eames contacts him with an assessment of the damage authored by the xenomorph as he tries to figure out next steps. Wendy and the remaining Lost Boys, meanwhile, contemplate their next steps as Wendy begins to determine their allies as well as adversaries. Similarly, we find Joe and Morrow confined together, assessing their predicament. And as we're getting a breakdown with these respective groups of prisoners, suddenly portions of the facility start losing power, placing Kavalier into a state of unease. Meanwhile, the search and rescue unit successfully escort Dame to her quarters before continuing to do their sweep of the remaining compound, continuing this gag of power loss throughout the facility, which, by the way, is eventually revealed to be as a result of Wendy in her cell. We have the search and rescue unit begin losing their comms, while Morrow and Joe soon find themselves freed as their holding cell mysteriously unlocks. Once free, Joe searches for Wendy and company, while Morrow tracks down and confronts Kirsch, the skirmish, which results in the release of our plant creature, allowing Kirsch to eventually gain the upper hand despite a seeming defeat. Wendy, meanwhile, contacts the lurking Xeno as it makes its way into the facility as Kavalier descends upon the Lost Boys holding cell. What follows is a fascinating exchange between Kavalier and the Lost Boys as he reveals his origins as well as the origins of another familiar face, soon to reveal their secret a bit later. However, this exchange provides further intrigue as by the conversation start features a fascinating power dynamic as Wendy demonstrates her technopathic powers, opening the Lost Boys holding cell door, and by conversations end, which you see here, sees Kavalier relieved of any personal protection from security, thanks to Nibs, as well as his well-being being endangered, thanks to Wendy. Meanwhile, Eanes attempts to lure Joe to Cavalier's room so that he can provide the T.Ocellus with a new host. As the Lost Boys execute their respective objectives, meanwhile, which are provided by Wendy, we have Slightly and Smee apprehend Morrow and Kirsch following the aftermath of their skirmish, of course. And we also have Dame being abducted by Nibs. Back at Cavalier's quarters, Joe finds himself in the crosshairs of the T.Ocellus thanks to its release at the hands of Eanes. However, thanks to last-minute heroics from Wendy, he manages to avoid the onslaught of the T.Ocellus, as well as Eanes, who is revealed in the skirmish to be a synthetic. Now discouraged to pursue its goal further, the T.Ocellus retreats to sights unseen and escapes the quarters of Kavalier. Shortly after, Wendy and Joe manage to track down Kavalier, who's aimlessly wandering the grounds, searching for a way out. Utilizing the xenomorph as her instrument, she spares Kavalier and instead sends her xeno after the search and rescue unit that arrived to escort him out. Meanwhile, the remaining search and rescue officers, which include Joe's friends, find a surprising encounter with the giant plant creature, aka the D. Plumacare, as well as Curly. Elsewhere on the island, the T.Ocellus manages to track down the body of Arthur and commandeers her, demonstrating an ability not yet seen, which is reanimating a dead host. The episode ends with Wendy and Joe, along with the xenomorphs and the Lost Boys, imprisoning Morrow and the remaining remnants of the Prodigy Corporation, which include Dame, Kirsch, Eanes, and Kavalier. All of this as Yutani's forces begin their invasion and descent on the island, which wraps up episode 8, which might be the season finale of season 1 or might be the series finale. I know that's still up in the air, and of course we're going to discuss that, but with that, I want to get into some themes with you all. Our hosts will be joining us momentarily, so I'm going to give them some time to join us, but I wanted to get into some themes that seem to be prevalent in this episode. But before I get into that, I want to get into some initial impressions. There were some things that I did like with this episode, and I do want to get the thoughts of our guests too on how they feel about that. But I definitely feel like there are some interesting things that have been examined with a lot of the characters. I do like the kind of the rise of the hybrids, if you will. So that was kind of cool. The creatures continue to be an awesome addition to this show. I will say that there were elements that I felt like they could have done more with, and it was a wasted opportunity. But I would say overall, that would be my main gripe, is that while I understand the need to plant seeds for future stories, there is still the need to be able to wrap up things, in this said episode. So, I mean, that is something that was a little concerning for me to have it in the way that it did, because it didn't feel like it was a wrap up of what was introduced in this initial season, even if you are continuing on to other ones. But getting into some themes that came to mind for me immediately is what we have with the idea of what you can describe as the original iterations, as well as the digital imitations. So what we have with being human versus your hybrid counterpart, because we have a lot of instances of that, which were interesting in this episode, of our hybrids really coming to terms with the fact that perhaps they aren't, necessarily human. Perhaps they did leave that humanity behind with what transpired with them making that transition from human to hybrid. Because we have examples of that. We have, Wendy forcing Curly to confront that idea based on seeing the graves. And then we also have that idea examined as well when we're talking about Smee and Slightly, talking about the mortality of what we have with the hybrid of Isaac. So we have these two parties, one side, which I found interesting, they're still kind of holding on to that bit of humanity that they have, and then the other side that is kind of really questioning if they really can logically classify themselves in that category when, for all intents and purposes, on paper, you would say that they aren't, because they don't have, as was mentioned at the top, they don't have the chemical components that provide a lot of those elements that allow, you know, someone to be human, that gives you those biological components that make one human. But at the same time, it also argues just that idea of what is a soul. You know, is it just something with these hybrids that's just copied, or is it honestly the original spirit, uh, 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 element that makes one human? Is it really that component, or is it just something that has been copied? So I'm curious, for those of you out there, for those of you that have been watching the show, if there have been components of that have been interesting, and what your thoughts on it. You can let me know in the comments, and as I said, we'll have our guests join us here in a minute. And it looks like we have them on. So give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. So yeah, our guests will be joining us momentarily. But yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on just that component that we've constantly revisited on the show, and they really bring it to a head in this episode, is that idea of your original human form versus this digital hybrid form that one takes on. Another thing that has been really fascinating with this episode too has been the idea of the role reversal that we've had with a lot of the characters. Very much in the beginning of the episode, we had this idea of adulthood and childhood, right? And so we have characters that are supposed to be authority figures, that are supposed to quote unquote be the adults. And we also have characters that are supposed to be children. And when they, you know, are being criticized for being children, it's kind of hard to really criticize them, because that's what they are. I mean, that is what state of mind they're in when they are making that transition from being a human to a hybrid. They still mentally are in a state of childhood. So that component was interesting, and how we're dealing with a lot of those components of what it means to grow up, of not being naive, of not being gullible. And it was fascinating how we had instances where throughout this season, the hybrids, for better or for worse, there were instances where their humanity showed through because of that childlike quality that they had. But unfortunately, in some cases, it also was their undoing. You had instances with Nibs where she had to have a portion of her memory wiped because of a very real human thing, and something that, you know, children can go through too, which is the idea of trauma. You have the instance of what happened with Isaac, where he wanted to impress his authority figure, his parental figure, which you could arguably say is a curse, in the role that he, that they look to him as the protector, as their guide, as their leader, in the earlier, half of this series. And so that that journey has been interesting, and how we now have a lot of the adult figures, the characters who quote unquote are supposed to have the answers, start to deteriorate in this episode, and we have a lot of them kind of fall apart. And by season's end, they are now the children and now the hybrids who are supposed to, for all intensive purposes, be the kids, kind of do away with quote unquote childish things, and become the adults, and become those in power. So that dynamic, I did appreciate how we have that role reversal, that we understand we have at the beginning of the series, but by season's end, they make it a point of showing us the hybrids in prison, and then having that role reversal where we have all of these authority figures, all these people who have been seen as parental figures, now in the very prison that they provided to these kids, at the top of the episode. So when you have elements like that, where you kind of play with roles being reversed like that, it's always very fascinating. So let me know out there if that was something that was fascinating for you in observing, that we had, in this episode. I'm going to give our guests a few more minutes, getting joining us in a minute, because I want to also get their thoughts, if there were any themes that came to mind for them, that were, fascinating, that they were able to pull from this episode, or even if it was something that they pulled from prior episodes. And if there are any from you out there, I'm curious to know what your thoughts were, on this said episode. You can, whether you're watching us live or if you're watching us after the fact, you can drop it down below. And I'm curious to know, how you felt about episode 8, if you guys have been keeping track of this series. I'm gonna get into some theories that I had with this episode. Just give me 1 second. Give me one moment, guys. Just gonna say sorry about that, guys. It's a little technical difficulty there, but no, we are still here. But as I said, I was getting into some theories, and the thing that has been fascinating with this episode, with the season finale, that I wanted to be able to get into, is what we perceived was going to be the result with the T.Ocellus. Because with the T.Ocellus, I know at the beginning of the run of this show, I had always anticipated that the T.Ocellus was going to make it out of it. I didn't anticipate that many other aliens were going to also make it out of it. I thought that was going to be the sole survivor, that was going to be able to continue on in other seasons, and maybe to another degree the plant creature as well, because it wasn't given enough screen time. But I did not see it coming, of it being able to take over, a hosts that were seemingly already out of the equation, or already dead. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. Are you guys cool with the fact that it's able to demonstrate this? Because I feel like now we're starting to get into some interesting territory, because now it seems like this T.Ocellus is almost able to do pretty much anything, which while that can be fascinating, that is a dangerous, I feel like a dangerous path to go, because you want there to be some limitations with this creature. At this point, we know that it will try to attack biological creatures, but it will also attack um, non-biological entities like the hybrids. So, I feel like that's interesting enough, but to also have it now able to take over dead hosts as well. I feel like we're starting to dangerously get into to I don't want to say OP territory, but kind of like in the same criticism that we've been that I've been hearing, and I understand it, that has come with Wendy and the abilities that she has, whether it's being able to communicate with the aliens, being able to control technology to the point that she's now essentially Neo and can also control other non-organic beings now. Now that we had that interaction that she had with Eames. So I'm curious to know, what your thoughts are on on that said idea. Give me 1 second. I'm going to check to see if we have our host with us. As I said, they gave me a heads up that they were going to be joining us a little later, so I'm going to see if they're with us now. Give me one moment. Theodus, go ahead. You
There we
there?
go. Oh, Jesus. Oh, yep, yep, yep. Wow, wow, yep. I was like, we'll turn everything all the way up. Maybe it'll work then. Nope.
Yeah, yeah. So, welcome to the show. Happy to have you with us. Um, One thing that, and then I love to, be able to backtrack with this episode first, just to get everything started. What were your initial impressions just with the episode, just with episode 8, just to get started?
So, um, I'd heard about this show, but I hadn't seen it yet. And so
Okay.
when you invited me, I was like, "Oh, great! I get to watch this show."
Yeah.
Not at all what I expected. Um, as far as like this universe goes, I tend to lean more towards Predator because I thought it was
Okay.
more
That's fair.
action. But like, there was a lot of action in this, and it was like this was shot like horror. This wasn't like space sci-fi. This was like horror. So like a lot of the cutaways indicating some of the action that already happened with like the bodies or whatever when they were laying, it really grabbed me. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna like keep up with this. I'm a fan. As far as the what I saw, like, man, they're doing. I'm glad that they're moving the franchise in this kind of direction instead of what they were doing before. You know what I mean? With like some of the previous movies. Um, yeah, this like this is coming from someone who's never experienced this series. It's dope.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, getting into some of I want to be able to give you the floor of some themes that have been popping up in each of the episodes, but particularly in this one. And shout out to Bath Time. Apologies, sir. Yeah, we've been having some. There was some uh, tech issues, so apologies. About
Oh
that, sir.
no,
But
all good, man. I've used StreamYard before, and it's like all of this. We're living in the future, man. Like we're living in the
yeah.
future. Like you can be on your phone, your computer, your whatever. I'm sure there's a way that you could like sign on here from your watch. So
Oh
there's
no, you
there's a lot.
can. You can.
Oh wow.
I I had to do a bait and switch with the mobile here versus the laptop, because
Oh man.
but as I said, apologies for any tech issues, but I'm glad you're still here with us, Bath Time. But and speaking of what those themes have been. Have there been any for you before? Because I wanted to get your thoughts on some that came to mind for me, but I wanted to be able to give you the floor since you're with us.
I love anything that deals with altering humanity. Like I love how they like how they dealt with like the humans that they were trying to contain versus the humans that are out there, and yeah, I'm such a fan of this already. Like, man, I personally um love the idea of, in a sci-fi world, like what it looks like to alter humanity in what way, and um like the possibilities. Like, I $6 million Man was my joint when I was like a little kid. You know, it was in syndication, and so I was just like, man, if I could have all that, but you don't think about what it really looks like to have something like that happen. So shows like this is like the full picture of, like, you take a person and like mess with who they are genetically, you're gonna see the like all of it. And I love it. I also love the xenomorph, the humanoid xenomorph. You know, because like in the movies, it was a lot more alien. And this one, when I first saw it, I was like, that's a dude in a xenomorph suit. That's crazy.
For sure, for sure. So one of the things I had mentioned at the top of the earlier in the show that
Hmm.
seemed to be interesting with this episode in particular is the idea of the human component versus the, what the, I guess you could say, the hybrid component. So the
Hmm.
original versus the digital, and how that has come to a head. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, because it was really fascinating where we have two camps that have sprung in this episode, where on one end we have Wendy and we have Nibs, and seems like we also now have Curly on
Hmm.
that side, on that slant, where they are coming to terms with the fact that maybe they aren't necessarily human, that they kind of left that behind when they became hybrids. And then on the
Hmm.
other end, where we have someone like Smee or someone like Slightly, who, regardless of their current physical body, they still seem to um hold on to that component of humanity, or remnants of humanity that they have, because in contrast to what Wendy was trying to confront Curly with, they mentioned that idea of being mortal, because one of the things of being a hybrid is that, you feel like you're beyond that limitation
Hmm.
of being immortal, but now they have to confront, just like being a human, that they can also die.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, of kind of dealing with those two different, states of mind?
Well, I like to put myself in that set of circumstances, because like I thought it was like some of the abilities they give are cool, and so I could see where you would be like, maybe I'm more than I used to be. Um, but yeah, like, I honestly, I would, yeah, like, humanity's not showing its best side in this particular IP. So I'm like, yeah, get them, um, but yeah, there's always blowback, because like, if you, no matter what you are, you were something before that, and so I'm sure there's gonna be there's gonna be conflict around it, of course, because that's what they're building into it. But like, I'm curious to see like how that's gonna twist and turn in the writing, and going forward, and like make who might change their mind and who might not. Oh, I lost you again.
I was gonna say another
Oh
thing
yeah.
that was cool as well is the role reversal that we had.
Hmm.
Where we had that role reversal of the kids now being, the parents by the end of the episode, and how a lot of those characters kind of deteriorated, like pretty quickly. Whether we're talking about Kavalier, whether we're talking about we kind of saw the deterioration happening with Dame slowly. uh,
Mm.
but it just kind of really like that House of Cards like really just came down for like Cavalier. So that I mean, I found that I like when shows deal with that type of thing and they play with those types of role reversals where
Yeah.
that was a major kind of visual uh uh a visual cue that we were given at the beginning, and then by the end, having those same characters that are perceived to be in control now, in that role of imprisonment, which was kind of wild.
Yeah, for sure. And like one thing that caught my attention in the beginning, um, they were saying they had them uh they had the hybrids in captivity for now, but that space was not meant to hold that space is only meant to hold humans. It's like, oh, so we know what's about to happen. But also it's a setup like, oh yeah, that's where the humans are supposed to go. you know so yeah, things like that. I think it's some pretty good writing going on. Like I said, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with it.
Yeah. And let me see what we have here. We do have a comment here. Bath time. Last episode seemed to be mainly about family to me. You had Boy Genius, the robot dad, Wendy and her brother. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had like familial ties that have I feel like have been prevalent throughout this entire series. It's been interesting to see what that has looked like when you have, your biological family and your quote unquote adoptive family.
Hmm.
You have that biological family that you have with Joe and with Wendy, and then like you have that adoptive family that Wendy has with the Lost Boys, that Wendy has with at one point with Cavalier. With the Lost Boys, actually had seem to have with Kirsch because they looked to him, for guidance and
Hmm.
I'll never forget the scene where you had that standoff between him and Morrow, and they hid behind Kirsch, as if he was like the parent.
Yeah.
All of those things have been interesting because even when we're talking about biological ties, that is the very thing that makes a lot of these characters human and gives them their humanity. But time and time again, we've seen and yeah, that's a good point, Bath Time. Yeah, he's not fully human now, but you understand what I mean. In terms of their origins, put it that way, their origins. But it's been interesting to see how those very human things have been the very things that have unfortunately been there been their undoings. I don't know if this show has kind of been a way to kind of look, I hate to say it, to kind of show the ugliness of what humanity can be. uh but hopefully it is also demonstrated, in the form of Joe, how it can also have compassion and how that's also necessary to be able to continue on, because that was also fascinating to have. What is it? What's the character's name? Smee, to be the one character to kind of hold Wendy back, because it seemed like Wendy for a moment there was going to was going to flip the script on her brother after all this time, being tied to him and having affection for him.
Hmm.
So um I was fascinated by that, to have someone who's not even technically your blood to kind of shake you into sanity of saying no, like he's he a he's your brother, and b he's one of us. He's not these other folks that we are pitting ourselves against. So
Yeah. And that's a very family is always an interesting thing to throw into a narrative situation like this. Like, because again, it's like you're saying, there's so many ways it can go, and they're all interesting. It's like, if the biological siblings stick together, that's still an interesting dynamic. If they split apart, that's an equally interesting dynamic. If something weaves in between, and like it's a through line, like you want to see what's going to happen next. and for whatever reason, like it's more interesting than if they were like best friends or something. Like being blood means something to the viewer as well.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
and for sure, and that's and speaking of family, for better or for worse, that has been something that has, if we really think about it, has really been a part of the franchise for, since its inception. Like if
Hmm.
you're really tracing back to what we have with any of the films, whether we're talking about the prequels, we've had familial ties. If we're talking about Prometheus, we had characters that were that were siblings. We had Waylon's daughter and surrogate son and David. I mean, we have spouses who, that are on the voyage together. We had spouses even in Covenant. We had pairs of spouses because they're trying to start a brand new colony. Um,
Hmm.
in the recent Alien Romulus, we had familial ties, be it
Not to mention, not
siblings.
not to mention that every one of these stories, well, in the overarching in all these stories, on the alien side, it's a mother and her children coming after everybody.
Sure, sure, sure. But getting into the theories, because I actually comment that was placed up here regarding Nibs, and I wanted to put that up, is, being annoyed about Nibs being the Nibs pregnancy, component that we had there in the series. And I know there have been a lot of theories out there. What if she really is pregnant? Maybe we don't really know how the Teocellus actually, procreates. And who knows? Like we may still get that, guys. You never know. Like they may still hold on to that and have that in their quiver, so to speak, as something to show in episode 2. But one thing that has been fascinating, also talking about something that has been a given with Alien. This was something that I was trying to get into, and unfortunately, because of technical difficulties, it was, the audio wasn't cooperating with me at the time. So I will bring it up again here. Is just the idea that one other thing that has been a a thing that we've seen throughout this franchise is things that have been turned put on their head. We've had a lot of characters who are seeking something that, in their minds are lacking, feel like they're lacking something, and for better or for worse, in a very twisted way, they get their wish. We have characters. I mentioned David in the prequel, in the prequel franchise, where he wants to be um he wants to, it seems like he wants to have a connection. He wants to, in some weird way, wants to be human, and he tries to develop those types of relationships in very twisted ways, like with I'm brain farting our character's name from that franchise with that we had in Prometheus. You could drop it there in the comments. But he tries to have create a twisted relationship with her, and it's implied that he biologically uses and experiments on her to get what we have with the protomorphs that appear in that franchise. We've had a lot of characters that have wanted to have families, and are incapable, whether they are barren, whether they, for whatever reason, are having trouble, having, conceiving and having kids. And lo and behold, in this franchise, they get their wish in a very twisted way. Those very same parties that are so badly want to have kids, they end up having kids, for better or for worse. So in that same way, I'm kind of in the same way that there we had in the comment there was a disappointment about the pregnancy thing. I am kind of disappointed that we didn't get that conversation, that conversation that Kavalier was seeking. But I wanted it to be something that was kind of twisted, where he got his wish, but at what cost did he get his wish? So
How many episodes of this series run in per season? Do you know?
Say again.
How many episodes is series running per
It's,
season?
I mean, it's hard to say. I know, like, we had eight episodes this season. We'll see if they try to do 8 episodes. If we get a second season, I know that they're still, as we speak, working to get that going, and it's still not a done deal yet.
Hmm.
But I mean, I feel like it this season could have benefited, and I can't believe I'm saying this because a lot of times I'll say we need to shave off an episode. This was a filler episode. Like, I feel like this could have been 10 episodes and it would have been okay. Like,
Yeah,
it didn't need to be 8, and you could kind of feel the pressure on the actual plot to be able to move things along quickly. When I feel like some of the ideas and the threads, the plot threads that they introduced, needed a little more space to breathe to be able to reach a conclusion, or if it didn't reach an absolute conclusion, at least a satisfactory one just for this contained story for season one.
maybe
Um,
it's all in the set. Maybe it's all a clever setup to work season two out.
yeah, I hear you, but I just I like I can see what how episode two can kind of be all. If this was kind of the slow burn, how season two can kind of be the
Payoff.
the junk food
Yeah,
portion of the meal, where it's just all carnage, and like, we have Utani descend upon this island, and like all the aliens are loose, and they have to we basically having like an extended like aliens type of series all for season
yeah,
two, them trying to kind of contain the issue on this island. But I'm not gonna lie, I did not, and I mentioned this, and I don't know if that part was caught, is that I didn't have it on my bingo card that Kavalier was gonna make it out of this. I didn't at all. Like, and I would, and I was hoping that he wouldn't make it out of this season. And I know, like, he's an interesting character. If now that we know that he made it out of season one, it gives more room to do more with that character. But in in what I had with my theories is that you could have still done that. You could have still done that by having him be a host of the T.Ocellus, and he could have still been Kavalier, but just a different type of Kavalier.
yeah,
Um, I don't know how I feel about. Uh, it was interesting at the time, but now that I'm sitting with it, I don't know how I feel about the T.Ocellus also having the ability to reanimate dead hosts. I feel like that's just too much. Like, in terms of everything that is demonstrated that it's capable of doing, like, there needs to be something that it can't do. And then I feel like at this point it can do basically everything. Like, just like you have a Mary Sue, and kind of you could arguably say with Wendy, you kind of have a alien Sue now with with T.Ocellus, where it seems like there's no limitations on what it's capable of. And don't get me wrong, it's interesting when you have a creature like that that can do a lot and is very intelligent, but I feel like there's enough there. We don't need to add any more abilities for it to do.
yeah. Because usually, what ends up happening is like some crazy weakness that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, because they need to give it some Achilles heel just to kind
Hmm.
of balance things out. And I feel like I said, it's enough. It can infiltrate, because it can, take over a host. That's cool. It's very intelligent. That's cool. So, like, I feel like that was enough. Like, and now that we know that it can take over dead bodies too, I'm like, okay, now where are we going with this? I kind of see maybe where they're going with this, of having that reunion with Arthur and Dame, but you could have still accomplished that without having to add this new ability. So, but did you have any theories going into season two? Hypothetically, assuming, I guess all intents and purposes, we will likely get a season two, even though as it stands right now, it's not definitive.
Well, one I've heard. So before you hit me up, I'd even heard that like like praise for the show. Like I would not be surprised if there was a season two. I um honestly need to sit with it a little bit before I even cook up anything as far as what I think is going to happen. I need to go back and like re watch and then rewatch and like take it all in because like I said, man, this is I'm excited. Like this is gonna be this is such a dope show. Um, well, no, as it stands, I don't have any theories going forward, man. I apologize.
No, you're all good. You're all good. Well, let me ask you this: are you satisfied with outside of the TSLS? Are you satisfied with the other creatures and what we've seen of them thus far? Because I have
hmm
some thoughts on that before we go. So like the ticks are cool, but I feel like there's more that could have been done with them. Where maybe there's another stage in their in their evolution that we have yet to see. So I'm hoping that we explore that more in season two. Because
And
just
that's
to
usually
have
how they
the
set things up. They give you a little taste, and then they, let it blossom going forward.
but that actually gives me a great segue too, because after all the buildup with this creature, and I was excited to see what it could do.
hmm
I was kind of underwhelmed by the Diplomacare. I don't know how you feel. I was hoping to see more and just to see it just I don't know it just seemed too basic of a thing that it did, and I thought that what it was capable of doing would have been far more elaborate than what we saw.
Um, you know, I always look at things like that as either this seems to be a well thought out show. Like the universe, like you have to consider so many things in the universe because they've done so much. The IP is so expansive. So like
Sure.
there has to be a plan. There has to be like something they're gonna roll out. Um like what you're alluding to, the shame would be if they never got to it, never got to a season two you didn't see. But I do think there's gonna be more. I think they're gonna, like you said, a phase two.
Okay. All right, cool, cool beans. Well, with that, I wanted to give you the floor of sharing your thoughts on if you were to rate this episode, and typically at this point, I would be putting up my emojis with my Jonesies. So if we're talking about five Jonesies being a perfect episode and four being good, and then make trickling on down, like where would you place this episode?
Uh I would say like I say like a four. I say like a four, solid four, yeah.
Okay.
Because like from when I started watching it, I was like, oh, what is this? Okay, all right, cool, yeah. And one of the things, so I have a history of jumping into shows in the middle or sometimes even towards the end. Like the first Game of Thrones episode I saw was a Red Wedding, and then I saw the rest of it. The first,
Oh wow, wow, that's
yeah,
that's an
yeah,
introduction.
and you get a feel for like, am I gonna like this show? Because spoilers don't bother me. I can watch things out of order, just put the story together in my head and be satisfied, or I could watch it out of order, then watch it in order and be just as enthralled. So starting this episode the way it did, it was like, oh yeah, this is a good show. So yeah, I would say a four.
Okay, all right, and I mean, I would say, man, bath time. I do enjoy you, man. I do enjoy it. 1 out of 5 for me. Four for the wow. Um, I'm gonna actually no. I appreciate it. I appreciate because we're not always gonna have none of us here are gonna always have the same thought. I'm actually going to give it a 3. I'm right there in the middle, and that's just because there have been episodes that have been really good. With this season, I did enjoy some of those middle episodes that we got where I like Alien when there are characters that would make logical, choices and decisions. And when that doesn't happen, I have issue with it and it kind of takes me out of it. Um, I did like a lot of. I mentioned the role reversal that we had with the hybrids and the and the, what is it, the prodigy figureheads. I did enjoy some things that did come to a head, where we had with the what is it, with the T.Ocellus. I mean, for better or for worse, they did do something interesting with that character over the course of this season. But I just can't I, I can't get with the fact that there were so many interesting ideas, and there were a lot of interesting ideas that were brought up over the course of this show, and I feel like there was still an opportunity to bring it to a close, just to tell this story. Yeah, when we're talking about, that this medium, even in a season, you have an opportunity to tell, even though you're planting seeds for future stories. Of course, there's an opportunity to still have things come to a head, and or to come to a conclusion. And it didn't feel like a conclusion to me of this story. It felt like it was a to be continued of a larger story, and that it someone it would make perfect sense if we got, even though we know we're not going to get it, it would make perfect sense if we got an episode 9 or an episode 10 to wrap things up. And
I
when you're
feel that.
watching other shows, like when they come to a close in the season finale, there is some sense of closure of things that have happened, even though they may plant seeds for things going forward. So
I can
just me.
feel that. I can feel that. Yeah.
But I'm still looking
I
forward,
I'm a
still looking
I'm
forward
a
to season 2.
I'm a episodic optimist. I'm just like, no, no, no. That's gonna. They're just like making me want more, you know. But yeah, I can see like wanting to see some of those arcs land, and see how they end. It's sad. It's cathartic, So that makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah, but with that being said, thank you so much for joining us this week
Thank you
to
for
talk
having me.
about this. Absolutely, love to have you back. Talking about the season finale of Alien Earth. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Theodus Crane, Theodus, no, bigdudeforhire.com is the website. And yeah, I'll be on screens December 5th for Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
For sure, for sure. And of course, guys, you can find me at Brandon Troy ENT, which you see there on X, Brandon Troy _ENT on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see y'all soon, guys. Bye now.